murderer, a murderer. She's in love with a 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 murderer, a murderer. This is the story of a girl that did a 4-year term to be a lawyer in the field of a top law firm. Her name was Betty, pretty girl with a cute ass smile. She's kinda tired of a case that she has been on a while, so she decided she would go out to the club to relax, maybe dance a little, take a few drinks on the max. When she walked into the club, my man, she looked like a star. She wore a blue silk dress, made her way to the bar. As she looked to her right, she seen this guy named Capone, real suave nigga, low fade on the dome. He began to walk to her and his head had a twist. Never in Betty's life she seen a man like this. He had a $500,000 diamond chain on his neck. He was wearing any clothes that any man couldn't get. He asked Betty why she looking all so sad and alone. He grabbed her hand and said, "Excuse me, yo, my name is Capone." She said, "Hello, my name is Betty, never mind me, I'm tired. I'm a lawyer on the case I've been on since I was high." She said, "I'm looking for the person killing my little brother. He was caught up in the game and never would he recover. It's been 5 years ago and still I don't have a clue." She looked Capone in the face, "What type of work do you do?" He said, "I do a lot of business in the US of A, giving people what they need in any time, any day. I got my own business, baby, and I deal with respect. Got some stocks with the Lakers and my own private jet. But never mind me, baby, let us go to my castle. Take a load off your feet and get away from the hassle." It was then that they left in the legs full of leather. It was then that they both started seeing each other. She's in love with the murderer, a murderer. She's in love with a murderer, a murderer. Now she still did a job and where he would take her. They were going on some cruises, taking trips to Jamaica. But she would wonder when he's gone, what type of work would he do? Cause he always come back with like $1 billion or $2. So she looked into his wallet, wrote his real name down, typed it up in the computer when she went back to town. When she went into the office, typed it up, went to work. What she seen was a shock, it made her whole body hurt. It was Frank M. Capone, aka Black Gotti, killing niggas in the game, had 23 bodies. It was a body of a millionaire that brought her to tears. It was her brother's name, the killer she been wanting for years. She was crying, she was nervous, she just felt like dying. She's in love with the killer, dealing kilos and buying. But he's been there for her, being her best friend. What can she do? Cause she's still in love with him. She's in love with the murderer, a murderer. 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 She gotta calm herself down because her heart beating fast. She's a lawyer turned lunatic and killing his ass. Supposed to meet him at his condo around 7 o'clock. She doesn't have a crime record, so she purchased a clock. Put on the dress that he bought her, cost about 5 G's. It's gonna be a hot night, about 200 degrees. And yeah, the temperature is rising as she cruising the road with the gun fully loaded, ready to unload. She never killed anybody, now a gun she would touch. And her eyes filled with water cause she loved him so much. As she run the doorbell, she heard the steps